So, first image of Ex Machina. First, we hear two notes of this kind of synthy pad from the score, and it sustains very evenly over black. And then the main title, Ex Machina, appears in white letters. Then, after that title, fades out, the first image appears, and that is it's a clear glass wall and doors. And behind that is a room with offices and desks and tables and a workspace, basically. And people are walking around and working, going about their day. In the reflection of the glass in this shot, we see more people walking across the frame from side to side, hustle and bustle. There is a woman in the foreground on the left side of the frame who is inside that workroom, and she's kind of staring intently at her computer that we don't see. It's off screen. Next, another establishing shot of the sleek and modern workplace. And the lighting of the walls and ceilings are these opposing colors. They're pink and light blue. And the light fixtures are really strange and very modern. There's a common area with chairs, and the chairs are funky. They're kind of like gamer chairs. That's what I thought of. And a man sits in one of those chairs on his phone, just kind of fiddling. Then we see a third establishing shot of this workplace interior, and there's kind of aquarium lit up in light blue with fish swimming around in the background, and another room lit pink next to that, and a different young man is sitting on his phone fiddling. More people are walking and hustling and bustling as well in the background in this shot. So then we cut to a shot inside the office area where people are working, where we meet our protagonist, Caleb, played by Domhnall Gleeson. He's sitting at his desk with earbuds in, and we dolly slowly toward him, and the bustle of the workers continues behind him. And there continue to be these non-diegetic sounds only. There's no sounds from the office. It's just these sort of drones and pads from the score. I found that interesting. Then we cut to a close-up of Caleb's computer coding screen and a pop-up message that reads, VIP email received. Subject, staff lottery. Then a medium close-up of Caleb with a very wide lens. He's intrigued. Then an extreme close-up on the screen as he opens the email of the words first prize blinking. And then the score becomes more rhythmic with these kind of electronic pulses behind the pads and effects. Caleb gasps. Then he picks up his phone. We see a POV shot of the phone camera sensor viewing Caleb reacting it. It kind of scans his face with trackers and all these different colors and things, and it scans the rest of the room, and it's just interpreting something. Then a profile shot shows Caleb smiling and texting. He texts a friend saying, I won. The friend says, WTF, seriously? Then a close-up of Caleb's webcam sitting on top of his computer monitor. Then POV of that webcam, also scanning and tracking Caleb's face when Caleb is reacting to this. Another friend texts Caleb and says, Buena historia, bro, meaning great story, bro, along with other texts flooding in congratulating him. The girl from the opening image runs up to Caleb at his desk and bends down to congratulate him. She puts her arm around him as he smiles. Then a reverse shot from behind him reveals that the others at their desks are clapping for him. Caleb is in disbelief. So then we cut to this gorgeous exterior wide shot. This is Norway, by the way, that they shot this in. These gorgeous exterior wide shots of these snow-clad hills and mountains, and a helicopter zooms across the sky above the landscapes. And then we see Caleb inside the helicopter studying these amazing vistas, and Caleb says to the pilot, how long until we get to his estate? The helicopter pilot laughs and says, we've been flying over his estate for the past 2 hours. And then these last parts of this opening are, we see more beautiful exterior shots of roaring rivers and a green valley, and then huge mountains and a bigger valley filled with trees, leading to a clearing of grass where the helicopter finally lands. Caleb exits. The pilot says this is the closest he's allowed to get to the building. He directs Caleb where to walk to get to this building, and then the pilot gets back into the helicopter and flies away, leaving Caleb on his own to find his way to the building entrance. All right. So, Greg, It's interesting that not even a lot happens in this opening sequence, but it took me a while to say all that because there's so much visual language here that's Garland is giving us. You said he was, a really up and coming director. This was his first directorial effort. It's pretty amazing. All of the people say, "Oh, this is such a talky movie." There's actually a lot of visual language in this movie that I think people underestimate and don't talk about. So take it away. What is he saying with this opening image of this glass, sleek, workplace, and then the opening sequence?
So I think the whole film has this real contrast of these beautiful natural images of all these organics, trees and babbling brooks and waterfalls and the hiking they do. And it's contrasted against these very straight lines. The tech space has become kind of known for its utilitarian sort of vibe. Everything is very boxy. Everything's very straight. There's nothing extraneous that you don't need unless you're working for like one of those tech firms where they have like ping pong tables everywhere and nap spaces and stuff. A lot of these offices are very sleek. Everything's glass. Everything's reflective surface. The film itself is a very reflective film. Ava is kind of a reflection of what her creator is in certain aspects. So I think using that as a visual language, there are so many mirrors and windows and so much glass in this film. Like there's glass everywhere. I think there's a bit of that to it. And I think it's just kind of showing Caleb in his element. Like it seems like he's liked, he gets a lot of responses from people saying congratulations, but there is a loneliness to him. He's kind of working by himself. And when the girl goes to hug him, like over his shoulders, there's this like kind of sweet natured awkwardness to him a little bit, like just at the contact. And you learn throughout the film, like there's a lot of insecurities that Caleb carries around with him. But I think they're kind of showing him, even though he's in his element, like he is supposedly a brilliant coder, or at least a very good one. There's still this like level of just discomfort in his own skin and the kind of sanitized workplace that these people have. And then cut that to, these beautiful vistas of, what do we say it was Norway?
Norway. Yeah.
Yeah. Like just like snow-capped mountains and this gorgeous forest. And I think there's something kind of interesting too about the bit with the helicopter pilot where he asks him like, when are we hitting his estate? And we've been on his estate for hours already. In Nathan's godlike approach to himself and to his creations, there's this sense of like his feeling of ownership that like, not only does he hold some kind of ownership over Ava and his tech, but he's literally owning nature. He's, you know what I mean? He's bought up this parcel of land that is so big that it literally takes a helicopter hours to get from where his property borderline is to where his facility is. He's bought up so much natural space to just fill it with like, power stations and fiber optic cable. There's something very intimidating right off the bat to Caleb, I think, in that statement that like we've been flying over it for 2 hours. Like it's very, Mufasa, like all of this that the light touches, you know what I mean? There's something very, you're almost getting a bravado sense of Nathan before you ever actually see him.
Right.
You're getting this sense of like scope and magnitude, and this guy is like bigger than, it's bigger than Jesus, like he's larger than life person. And I think a lot of that is telegraphed very early on. I think you may not realize it's been telegraphed to you until you're further into the movie and you think back on it and go like, oh shit, like a lot of this makes sense. One thing I know about Garland, after seeing all of his films and his series and reading his books, especially with his filmmaking, there is not like one wasted second or frame that this guy puts into a movie. There's nothing there that feels like it's not meant to be there. I think a lot of times as film essayists or critics or people who just love movies like you and me, there's this tendency to kind of like apply a characteristic to a director or an actor or a performance that maybe us just looking too deeply into it and really like it was a much more surface level decision. Garland's not that guy. Everything about this dude is like meticulously chosen. And so there is a very clear reason to him, at least, why every single thing in that opening 5 minutes happens that will telegraph itself later throughout the course of the movie.
Yeah, that's a really interesting and good analysis. I think this opening image was really, and like you were saying about just in hindsight, watching the movie again, a rewatch or just thinking back on the movie, I didn't really realize this until maybe the first couple times that I saw the movie. To be fair, there were big intervals of time between when I saw this movie for the first couple times, but in these last couple rewatches for this, I realized this opening image is kind of brilliant because it's this glass room that you can see through, and you have all of these people kind of trapped in there doing the glass wall takes up the entire frame, right? And we see this female person, this female figure focused in and doing her job, and all of these other people kind of, going back and forth behind her. And I'm just thinking to myself, what a perfect, preceding image to what we see of Ava. This is basically the human sort of avatar, metaphorical image of Ava doing her thing, not quite knowing the extent of how much she's a prisoner, and then all of the other sorts of people behind her, which you can kind of imagine to be like her predecessors, that are all did their jobs, all served their functions so that she could be there doing her thing in the foreground of the shot. That is amazing to me. I mean, we talk about like what's cinema and what isn't. This is the kind of thing that has the language that is so profound as to be not able to be called anything other than cinema. It's a language, it's an understanding, it's a visual canvas, it's so many things. But I that just really, really hit me. Like, this girl is like the human equivalent of Ava, and he's giving us that in the first cut, Greg. It's unbelievable. So when I saw that, I melted in my chair. And I already knew that we were going to do this for the podcast. But after that first image, and I really understood that this is perhaps what Garland was giving us in the, at the get-go, I sank in my chair and I was like, whoa, this is gonna be fun to watch again.
There's a bit of a human zoo kind of feeling to it. And maybe this is like what you were talking about before with the spheres outside of things. Like, maybe we are, Caleb and this girl in the beginning and the workers, maybe they are the Avas to us. Like, we're the Calebs sitting watching them through the glass of our screen. Yeah. And then, the film starts kind of compacting further and further in until you get to the obvious, like, Caleb, Nathan, and Ava story. But
right.
Maybe there is kind of like I don't want to call it a fourth wall break, but like a fourth wall wink of like us watching them. Yeah,
this sort of voyeurism of of just being human, and the hierarchical structures of it.
It makes us culpable, it makes us complicit in what we're going to watch,
right.
Gives us some of the responsibility.
Right. And which is exactly what happens to Caleb later, right? Because he's able to see through the glass, understand, and then make an ethical decision of what he needs to do in order to show that he has some sort of a moral purchase on what he sees on the other side of the glass. Saving the animal from the cage in the zoo. That is communicated to me here. And just to have a director that is able to draw a correlation to everything, all of these big, giant things that he's going to be talking about later on in the movie, to condense that all into an image that we see at the head it's masterful. It's amazing. So that really blew me the hell away. on this rewatch. And then, yeah, this whole sequence, I loved everything you said about, the straight lines and the right angles versus these natural vistas and horizons. And, it's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, just the whole idea of this scientist or this entrepreneur, whatever you want to call him, this brilliant guy who is in isolation from all of humanity, right? He's growing this new type of intelligence, this new type of consciousness, isolated inside this natural setting, this natural landscape, right? The unnatural meeting and clashing with the natural is quite just a thought. And then he uses that as a canvas in this opening of the movie to do exactly what I think you nailed it, like this discomfort that we feel, and just showing about the Caleb character and introducing all that. He does so much stuff. And I was just going to ask you, what do you think specifically before we go into Scenic View? What do you think about the choice to not have any diegetic sounds from The Office in this opening sequence until basically the helicopter? Just score, and we only see images. What do you think about that?
So I think part of it is mood setting. I think anytime you're using score to tell your story, I'm a huge fan of film scores. I think music is such an integral part of a film, unless you're making a conscious choice to not have one, which in and of itself is a very artistic choice to make sometimes.
Challenging.
Yeah, it's really, you really have to kind of have a real mastery on what kind of story you're wanting to tell if you don't
Agreed.
include a score.
Yeah.
So, but in this case, I think it's a lot of mood setting. It's kind of showing you, like, number one, how much of the world it seems like maybe Caleb is blocking out around him. The fact that he's got his earbuds in, like you're not really hearing any of the Office. I think there's this, and again, this is where I think the correlations between Caleb and Nathan exist, like this kind of desire to isolate yourself a little bit with your own brilliance. Nathan or Caleb, I think if the end didn't play out how it necessarily played out, may have become somebody like that with a huge ego and who just lives in their bubble. I think tech as a profession kind of does that. You walk into any coding room, you're going to find people wearing these that are just like typing away on their keyboards, like, writing lines and lines and lines and lines of code for hours and not really talking to each other, not taking in any of what's going on around them. It's literally all what's in here, and that's it. So I think there's a little bit of that isolation. I think it kind of removes the humanity from the space, just having score and no real sound design to speak of in those opening bits. I think it kind of offices are loud places. Like if any of you listeners have ever worked in one, like there's a lot going on. There's phones ringing, there's copiers going off, there's people chit-chatting, the sound of the glugging noise from the water cooler. Like there's a lot of noise that happens in an office, and it can be a very human place when you have those touches, those sensory touches. And I think Garland kind of takes that away right away, that like kind of separating humanity and tech. And I don't know if that's what his intent was. That's just what it feels like for me to watch it.
It certainly does. No, that's really interesting, because when you were saying, it sucks the humanity out of the space, I think that's dead on, because that gives me yet another sort of one-to-one allusion to Ava's existence. I mean, she's trapped in this place without pretty much any sound, as far as I can tell, unless there's some sort of like a babbling brook sound to imitate the outer, because she's got that one little kind of terrarium thing, but which is also mirrored by the aquarium in the workplace. It's like there's so many frames within frames.
It's like a facsimile of the natural world that isn't exactly that. Like, fish tanks are great. I love having an aquarium, but you're lying to yourself if you think the fish is in there like, oh, I'm in an ocean. It's like, no, it slams into a glass wall every 3 feet that it swims. Like,
Right.
and so there's this, and that, again, another instance of like outside looking in at something and observing it is that aquarium. Like Ava lives in an aquarium. She's in a big person-sized, not even that big, person-sized aquarium, just with like less decor. Like, at least the fish have shiny rocks and things to look at. Like she has this window with a tree outside and, nothing else to really speak of. Like, one place to lay down, one desk, and that's about it.
Yeah. It's essentially a prison cell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want to get across to listeners here how intrigued I am by how much of all of this information we get that's directly corresponds with the story to come, but in this opening sequence. I mean, to me, Greg, this is the difference between like good movies and great movies.
Sure.
This is every single moment. You said it's clear that this director, Alex Garland, is very meticulous about all these details. Every moment is meant to give you a facsimile type image, a feeling, revealing something about Caleb, revealing something about the overall themes here. I mean, it is quite a thing of architecture of a story that he's constructed here in the opening. Amazing. The last thing I was thinking real quick of this opening sequence was, without the score, it almost seems like we are, like you said earlier, we are looking into that aquarium at these fish, and it's this idea of looking in and the manipulation. It almost feels like, upon a rewatch or thinking retrospectively, Nathan is manipulating the whole thing. This is Nathan's aquarium, and these are his fish. Because this is the godlike, complex or the godlike situation that he's in, and they are his fish. Because we find out that Caleb wasn't, a lottery winner. It wasn't random.
No, it wasn't
he was
a random
selected,
selection. Yeah.
Right? In the same way that you don't select randomly what fish you're going to put in the aquarium.
No,
you need
and
to
this dude's
get
got
a fish that's not going to eat the other fish. It's got to be the right color. It's got to, that's the whole construction of it.
He's got cameras in Nathan's bathroom mirror. Like, you can't tell me he's not watching what's going on at I'm sure he's not watching it all day, but there is a sort of, puppeteerish kind of thing happening. And I think not only is that happening, I think that's part of it's part of like what gets Nathan off a little bit is the, moving chess pieces on the board for him and deciding like, this person in my company is the guy I want to come out. Like there's something very controlling about Nathan to begin with.
Right.
But I like the idea that you were saying of like, that's Nathan's little, diorama. He gets to put all the people in the places that he wants to put them. And there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, I can feel the manipulation. I can feel what it's like as a viewer for Nathan as a character, and to watch and listen and concentrate in solitude about all of the inner workings of the business and the place that you've created. It's just another widget of his creation. Yeah, and it's pretty striking.